There you go.
Okay, all right. You want to talk Matthew Toe at 62 points or Dan Hollins at 87 points?
Welcome to the Rugby Rant Podcast Show, your premier North American rugby podcast. Growing rugby, one fan at a time.
And here we are, rugby fans, episode 121, of course, of the Rugby Rant Podcast Show. A quick reminder for those of you tuning in, my name is Ty, the Sapper Braga. Joining me is Rob, the Hammer Hammerschmidt, and Scott, the big guy himself, Ferrara. We are, of course, your team here for the Rugby Rant. And what we do here is talk about rugby in North America because we aim to grow rugby one fan at a time. And we're going to be back in a moment to share the around the pitch news, things you should know from across the rugby realms.
This ball represents the game we love. A game fueled by passion. But there are those who wear no number, nor are they in the locker room or the field of play. But they are there for every high and every low. Yes, they are watching every kick, tackle, and try scored. Yes, they are there for when you need them most, because they are the Major League Rugby fans. And the time has come for you to stand with your team. Join us at shopmlr.com today.
So, gentlemen, once again, you know how it goes. Fans tuning in know how it goes. And what we need to do is rapid fire around the table, something important that fans should know about or learn about. And we're going to start it off with Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Ty. I just want to, I'm a big fan of collegiate rugby, of course, because I think it is the lifeblood of rugby in the United States in our own way. That's how we, that's a way in which a lot of our American players both develop and find the game. And so I want to celebrate in keeping with one of our more recent interviews with NCR's Jeremy Treese. The Collegiate Rugby All-Stars happened for men's. It was 2 weeks ago in 15s at Aviva in Houston. It was the National Shield Challenge, January 14th and 15th. And the women's was in sevens on January 21st. The men's had over 300 players from 105 colleges representing 34 states. And we saw the Independent Reds beat Pac Coast, I believe, and win the men's championship. And then the women's champions were in sevens. And what a great opportunity it was for young players to show their wares on a national stage at a MLR stadium. So kudos to both the men's and the women's that represented their respective parts of the country in collegiate rugby.
And I love the fact that you also highlighted that we had the opportunity to chat with Jeremy Treese about the decisions that led to being able to have it hosted there in Houston, what other venues might have been chosen. And again, as a reminder to our fans, if you haven't seen that interview, go back and check it out online under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod. You can find it on our social media in our traditional run, pass, or kick interviews with Jeremy Treese, the CEO of the National Collegiate Rugby Programs. So thank you for that, Rob. And let's hand it over to Scott. What do you got?
Hey, fellas. So we're going to be talking about the women's sevens program. They had an unbelievable run in Hamilton, New Zealand this past weekend for their HSBC sevens tournament. And they opened up undefeated in pool play on the back of a Cheta Emba hat trick against Spain and Nia Tapper popping a double against Ireland. Coming all the way through, unfortunately lost to the Black Ferns for a silver medal. But silver medal for the women, bronze medal for the men. Perry Baker's 60th tournament. There are a lot of milestones. I think this is the first time since 2019 that both men's and women's team medaled in the same tournament, I believe. And I believe it's back-to-back medals for the women. They got bronze in the last tournament. So listen, we're seeing great play for our sevens teams. They're moving on to Sydney. Keynote, Jazz Gray got injured, unfortunately, in that match against New Zealand. She's going to be coming home and replaced by Sarah Levy. Sarah Levy is another speedster. man, these two girls like they're skating. They look like they're skating on grass. So watch out. The Sydney Sevens is going to be wild.
Yeah, and it's excellent to be able to see this run of form because it could have actually eventually mean it continuing. They actually get automatic qualification for the next Olympic
Absolutely.
Games, which of course, the pinnacle of the sport to receive an opportunity like that to represent your nation at the Olympics. Good shout out there from Scott. I'm going to turn it back to Major League Rugby for a moment. And we got one prop in and one prop out on the transfer lists over here. So what do I mean by that? San Diego prop Patty Ryan went overseas to Japan, if you're not familiar with, has decided to be able to stay there with a League One side entitled the Black Rams. He divulged this information on social media and also saying that he unfortunately will not be returning to San Diego, much to the dismay of many fans. And of course, the side itself, really, I mean, they had planned to be able to have an experienced number 3 there. Right now, I'm not sure who might be filling that spot, but it looks like San Diego might be shopping for a new player. So we'll see what happens there. But we got another prop coming in is the Argentine Ramiro Herrera. If you're not familiar who this name is, what this guy does, he's an Argentinian national player, had honors at the Rugby World Cup 2015. He competed in the semi-final as the starting player and, in fact, was one of the standout players in that match that led to their success. He's going to be coming in as a little bit of an older 33-year-old to Old Glory DC. They'll be looking to bolster their front row there. It'll be interesting to be able to see what type of influence he will have and how long he might stick around. But it's one prop in and another prop out. So it's those are some of the changes in MLR, and I wanted to highlight MLR for a moment before we go in any further, because in a moment, gentlemen, we're going to be sharing our thoughts as a team on the recent rebranding of Rugby ATL. It's been a hot topic online, and we're going to continue that discussion alongside two of our guest ranters. Joining us is Rick Collins and Daryl McCormick. They'll be discussing how we think it went in the reveal and how perhaps it should have gone as well. But for all those fans that have already enjoyed the reveal of their kits, go out and check it out on shopmlr.com. All of the kits that have been revealed are posted online through their store. It's your opportunity to grab your kit before the season arrives, which is really just around the corner. And the best benefit of all is that it is on many occasions, assuming your order comes in before 2 p.m. PST on that day, it will ship out the exact same day. This is a major shift, I'm sure, for folks last year who were waiting halfway through the season and only getting their kit. I mean, I don't know when you got your gear, Scott, but I know some people were waiting until probably the 4th game into the season to be able to put on their jerseys, right? So this is a major step in the right direction. Same day shipping. Go and check them out on shopmlr.com. And on that note, we'll be back in a few moments to be able to give you that promised rant edition talking about the Rugby ATL Rattlers rebrand of whatever they're calling it. We'll be back in just a moment.
Tighthead Brewing Company is not just Chicago's premier location to watch rugby and enjoy quality ales and lagers. It is also a great place to enjoy local acts performing live music every Thursday and Saturday nights. Additionally, their Wednesday night trivia nights are something not to be missed. Tighthead is located in Mundelein, Illinois, and easily accessible for many Chicagoans, as it is just steps away from the metro. Owner Bruce Durr and the Tighthead staff are dedicated to ensure your microbrew experience is as tight as their beers. Bruce's love for rugby extends beyond the origin of his brewery's name. Tighthead is committed to supporting the rugby community. This includes his support for Lake County RFC and our own Rugby Rant podcast show. Tighthead's tap room is like the familiar rugby clubhouse in which friends and teammates can meet, socialize, and enjoy the wide variety of brews on tap. Regardless of whether your palate enjoys a good IPA or a dark barrel-aged brew, Tighthead can deliver. Hey, Chicago, when you want rugby, Tighthead Brewing Company will satisfy your thirst. Tighthead, it's worth more than a try.
And welcome back, rugby fans. It's that time where we do what we do here on the Rugby Rant, and that is debate all the inside scoops of rugby across the US and abroad. And here in particular, we're going to be talking about a hot topic that has taken over social media. All the rugby circles in domestic rugby have been lit on fire in what is best described as the dumpster fire of rugby ATL. Now, what am I talking about? First of all, you probably already know, but let me put it in context and who's here to help us figure it all out. Recently, Rugby ATL decided somehow by surprise to most fans of Major League Rugby that it was time to do an entire 180 and change everything they've been doing. How did they do it? With a change of color, a change of logo, a change of policy, a change. But is change good in this case? And to help us figure that out, we have brought in, of course, some of our regulars we reintroduced to the show. First up, Daryl McCormick. Welcome back.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be able to have you here as our resident ATL fan and our authority on the subject, close to the ground. But joining us, you normally know him from the Jackal's Den, of course, representing Dallas. But on this occasion, certainly happy to throw his hat and shirt into the conversation, is Rick Collins. Welcome back, my friend.
Yeah, I've got it. I loved the logo. I believe I was the person who initially put Rattler as the nickname on Reddit, and that was several years back.
Can we get a confirmation of that? I think we need it.
I think it's confirmable. I think it's probably in there. So, but I always thought, dude, the snake is awesome. I have friends that have played there, Zach Mizell, several other guys that I played with actually in sevens. A while back from Arkansas State, my days with the Quins. And I love the color scheme. The color scheme represents Atlanta. I don't know what they're talking about with these other
hold on,
colors.
We haven't even started the rant
Yeah,
yet.
calm down, dude.
I'm here to rant.
Trying to take this time. Trying to take Daryl's time away from him.
All right, wait.
We haven't had
Rick,
a yellow
Rick
card
has
in a
had a
while.
couple of shots. He's tuned up. He's ready to go. Damn it.
Slow down a little bit.
He started that social early, fellas.
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't even introduced the other guy. Jeez. Last time. So hard to find good help these days. So with that being said, let me finally introduce my cohorts here with Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt, and of course, Scott the big guy for and I am Ty the Sapper Braga. And as Rick had pointed out, we're here to be able to talk about the colors, the branding, and all that type of stuff. But we're going to frame this conversation in two parts. One part, how was the rebrand set up and executed? And in that way, we're going to make sure that we cover your thoughts from each one of our ranters here. But finally, on the second part, is the aftermath and how it's been received by our greater rugby community, in particular, those closest to Rugby ATL, the fans, the Rattlers as they're being called now. But we'll get into that in a moment. So those are the two key takeaways that we want fans tuning into our show to be able to hear from you gentlemen. And to be able to start us off, I want to make sure that everybody understands what has transpired. Recently, on the 23rd of January, a press conference was held online through Facebook Live. And that was in conjunction with the management and operations leaders at Rugby ATL and the fans who had the opportunity to participate through Messenger or Facebook posts to ask and propose their questions to learn more about how these decisions were made and who was included in them. And we've got some insights to share about that. Now, at its peak, there was over 150 people participating and asking questions. So there was obviously a lot to be able to cover for them, perhaps overwhelming at times, you could argue, but we encourage you to go and check that out. But the main key player in all of this is somebody by the name of Amanda White, who is recognized as the president of business operations, somebody who's not typically seen to be at the front sharing these messages up until now, but has been a part of the organization from its earliest days. Perhaps one reason why she might have been chosen to be the bearer of this news. But is it the bearer of bad news? That is the true question here. And to be able to start us off, we're going to offer the floor to Daryl.
All right. Thanks, Ty. Yeah, this was actually, I got a little bit of heads up from this from little birdie told me somebody by the name of Rick Collins. I don't know this. There's something that came down the pike.
Don't give him more mic time.
I've heard of this guy, but this guy, right? So I actually kind of had a little bit of a heads up that something was coming down the pike. And so I was hoping that it wasn't true, but unfortunately it is. So as you may be well aware by now, it has not been well received by the fan base in Atlanta or rugby ATL fans in general. Just an extreme. If you follow the Rugby ATL fan page, somebody took a survey a couple of days ago. It was 90%, 95% at one point, disapproval. And that's pretty strong message from the fan base. And even on my Facebook page, I had quite a bit of most folks were, they want to be supportive. They want to support the players. They want to support the coaches, but they're just gut checked by this thing because it's a complete 180. I mean, how do you think about it. Why do you rebrand a team? Why did the Washington Redskins become the Washington Commanders or Cleveland? A lot of times you rebrand for a serious reason. Okay. It's those are serious issues where you have to have that conversation because there's a hell of a lot of expenditure and time, money, blood, sweat, and tears to do a rebrand. We're talking about a professional rugby team in the United States. It's an extremely tiny market. We don't have a large fan base. We really, beggars can't be choosers. We can't afford these kinds of mistakes to damage an already small but very important fan base. And I just think that the damage is pretty deep, and it's going to take a long time to recover. And you could tell that on the live feed tonight. It was dark, and it was unfortunately very painful for everyone involved. So on a larger scheme, I hope MLR is paying attention to this as well, and lessons will be learned. So, but yeah, it's the whole rebrand was done, and Amanda even admitted that she has made a terrible mistake. So now the damage is done, and where it goes from here remains to be seen.
Well, it sounds that what you're saying is that there's a lot of trust that's been lost in the organization and the relationship between the fans. And when we do kind of know that the general rugby fan will support what rugby is available, but they also tend to want to have a say in how it's being represented.
Absolutely.
And that's a lot of the sentiments that we're hearing from people online, is that they felt like they needed to be able to have some inclusion. Yeah. So let's turn our attention over to Rick. Now is the time for you to speak.
Wait, do you have a timer?
Let me give a stop. I'm getting a red card on this. So obviously I'm not going to take credit for revealing it, although it does seem, based on some response that I got from a connection that I messaged with, that actually she almost specifically called me out for revealing the information too soon, and that wasn't what they wanted to happen. Let's be honest. As soon as you trademark something, it is public information. So that trademark is available to see. And as we've looked the last 3-4 years with the way expansion has worked in MLR, we are all looking at this. Who's coming next? Is it going to be, is Miami coming? Is Las Vegas coming? Is it St. Louis? All these trademarks are popping up here and there. Some are working out, some aren't. But as soon as that trademark becomes public information, everybody finds out about it. It's a small community. We all know each other.
Right.
So this is, for them to blame the fact that a fan found their information online is ridiculous. The way she treated the fans in the letter that she wrote, and look, I'm a Jackals fan. I'm by no means a Rugby ATL fan. I have friends that have played there, played for life, and everything.
Some of my best friends are Rugby ATL people.
but this is a young league. We want to be supportive of the identities of all the fan groups, right? We're communicating regularly because we want to go visit each other. We want to hang out, have beers together, enjoy the camaraderie and the competition. So the fact that, they're going to come and do this at this point, like weeks before the season starts, right? Reveal this. And you have Chicago, who just revealed their colors like 3 months ago. And now we're looking at basically a very similar color scheme, very similar logo look. And then you're talking about taking away the red, black, gold, gray, white that is, predominant amongst all the professional teams in Atlanta. Are you kidding me? Like, to be able to say we could like do a crossover with the Falcons and have some cool jerseys that are Rugby ATL football jerseys with the same colors and everything, that's a badass opportunity in the future, right? And you're going to go with this color scheme that, let's be honest, it's not particularly pretty. When I look at it, it looks like something you would do for, like a low-level minor league baseball team where you're just trying to be really different. And to me, the excuses of, we wanted to change and have change, and change is good, and you'll learn to like change at this level. When you're talking about change, we think, okay, a new coach, right? Maybe a new GM to freshen things up when things aren't going well, like, what's happened with the Jackals. But to go ahead and change around the logo and the theme and basically get rid of the Rattler altogether, and then for her to call the fans Rattlers, it was embarrassing to me. I'm so disappointed for Rugby ATL fans.
Right. And I want you to clarify that just for a moment, that part, because it's an important one. Not all fans who aren't so connected to Rugby ATL might understand the difference between calling the team Rattlers and calling a fan of the team a Rattler, which is a clear distinction between the two that was kind of blurred in this letter, right? And then in the press conference too.
You can literally see the Den Dog sign behind me. We don't call ourselves Jackals. The team is the Jackals. Those are the Jackals. We're the Den Dogs, whatever you want to call us, but we're not Jackals.
Right.
Yeah. In a similar vein, like it's the cohort in San Diego.
Right.
That's
its own identity.
It's its
exactly.
own identity. And you don't confuse the Legion,
right?
As players or organizations.
We're not the players. We're the supporters, and we want to have our own identity as supporters of the club. And to me, she just doesn't get that. I don't know if it's her, the organization, but the way she spoke makes me believe it's her, that she doesn't understand that.
Well, in the letter, she refers to herself as, being responsible. I is a few times. But regardless whether it's her own personal opinion, which obviously it isn't because she's representing the business too, and the organization, it's the greater rugby minds of that organization that are driving that sentiment too. And it sounds though to me in two parts that I wanted to make sure that we hone into. We don't miss the real takeaways here for fans tuning in. One, do you think that the build-up to the reveal was handled correctly? And in this case, it sounds like a hard no for you because the attention was not in the right direction. Whereas, we didn't handle the build-up and the reveal correctly because a fan spilt the beans first.
Let's look at what New York did. And Scott, I hate to put my nose up Scott's butt, but the way that Rooney
smells good though
handled the release of the iron workers, and a lot of us like, well, iron workers, whatever, it's kind of but honestly, the way they revealed it and the way that they handled it, connecting it to the city of New York, that made a lot of sense. I was like, this is great. The way they did it is great. Now, whether the decision was right or wrong, that's, for everybody to kind of decide on their own. But the way they did it was right. The way Rugby ATL handled this, in my opinion, terrible.
Okay. And we want to make sure that we keep moving this around the table. And I'm just going to hand it straight over to Rob because it looks like he's ready to go.
So I'm going to speak on this and take a few parts from the letter just to talk about the actual rebrand, not necessarily about the response in and of itself. But what was interesting in the rebrand is you talked about, Amanda White talked about the need to disrupt and be bold, to take our place amongst major sports teams in Atlanta as the rationale for doing so. And I thought to myself, there's nothing in my mind that's bold or disruptive about the logo and the identity created. To me, it looked like you could have gone back into the 70s and it was something the Padres would have put out, with the color scheme, et cetera. There's nothing bold about the color scheme. If you want to go to a bold color scheme, look at the PR7's headliners. The yellow, the bright pink, the orange, that's bold, right? Nothing about this rebrand was bold. And secondly, what's wrong with, connecting to the already existing, pre-existing sports identities in a sports market, right? She talks about it like it's a bad thing. My concern is in Seattle, they have one of the most robust fan bases in the league. And the part of the reason why is those people identify with the Seawolves colors that are connected to the Seahawks, right? And so, it's like, why is there that need to break away from that, right? You can coexist and build on that identity and then make it your own, which I think the Rattlers did as an organization by bringing in the snake. I mean, it was a pie in the face to a U.S. Eagle, Chance Wangalewski, who spent so much time devoting himself to putting up the mural and putting it in the 404.
And that was actually one of the comments online. Alexander, I'm going to forget the last name. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you got a 20-foot mural, which is kind of a call to arms for everybody there, galvanizing around that theme.
By the way, the name you're looking for is Alex McDonald. He was a former Rudy player. Yes. He lives down in the Carolinas and knows a lot of the guys down at Life.
Right. And thank you for helping me with that one. And the point that you brought up there is that's part of the identity, and it stood, and people knew what it was. Carry on, Rob.
And the fan base had kind of embraced it too. From what I understand, a lot of the fans just naturally started bringing shakers with beans in them. And when things would happen, they'd shake those up like a rattlesnake. Exactly. I mean, that's a kind of organic identity that can be developed within pre-existing sports,
and you don't have to pay for it.
And you don't have to pay for it, right? And people,
but you do a rebrand.
People are loyal. People become loyal. Fans become loyal. Why? Because they've taken some ownership of things that are going on. Why do you disrupt that? I just think it was a mistake in that regard. And lastly, last piece, sorry, gentlemen, but I'm going to tell you, I've heard from two separate sources that the ATL made a stink when the Hounds turned in their not only their brand, but also their shirt colors. They originally wanted a green, and ATL raised a stink because it looks remarkably of what you would have seen come out of the Hounds. People that are fans of the Hounds wanted to see a green jersey, right? And they were wondering, you missed the mark. Why? The answer is because ATL complained about it, and two separate sources, independent sources, have confirmed that. So it's troubling when you hear things like that.
And it wouldn't surprise me at all because, I was one of those people that expected to be able to see a green predominant color in a Hounds kit, right? So, it wouldn't surprise me if it ended up being that way. But it also goes to be able to show how influential the ownership circle and management of Rugby ATL must be for MLR to be able to go yes to one and no to another, even though clearly the one has more of an identifiable brand associated to that color than the other. But is it a question of who was there first? The letter suggests that they had this planning for 8 months in advance. Okay, great. Then why was your rollout so poorly handled? And that's what a lot of fans are asking. And
why weren't the Hounds told immediately then, hey, you can't use the green?
Well, probably because they only had 2 weeks to figure it out and they did a better job. but more so is if it was 8 months, how many times along the way could you have stopped and said, could we include these people? How about this? What about that? Where are the players in between? Where are the fans in between who could have been consulted? And this kind of goes back to your original point, Daryl, about how fans have felt and the reaction to it being 95% in the negative, or 90 to 95%. But Rob, one thing that I want to be able to have as a takeaway there that I will give you a credit to, not only on this occasion, but every time you've mentioned it before, and you've been a really, really great proponent of this, is pushing the fact that you need to be able to let fans decide the identity of their supporters club. Gold Diggers, Cohort, the list can go on to be able to involve Jackal Den, of course. But all of these things have evolved organically, was what you had said. So why wouldn't you let that blossom? Why wouldn't you let that exist in that way and continue to do so, especially when it is free, was one of the earlier points.
Ty, one of the things that was brought up, Scott, I'm sure you heard this as well, is they're trying to create their own supporters club group
I
Stop
did
taking my goddamn points.
Are you kidding me?
Stop taking my goddamn points. So let's get hot, baby. Rick's been cooking. Listen, Rick's been cooking. Let's get hot. So the first thing I was going to say is, for 8 months you didn't listen to the fans, and then you wanted to promote a fans club that you're going to run. And as we see with, as much as Rick doesn't like blowing smoke up my butt, although I usually pay extra for it, I have started an organically grown, Rooney Supporters Club. Right. Rick started something organic. My relationship with Rooney, they came to me and said, we want to be part of you. Rick had a different back and forth with the team, right? There's some other supporters groups that are supported by the team. There's some other supporters groups that are not. But I think it's funny to give the mea culpa of saying I screwed up by not involving the fans, and then keep pushing down their throat. Oh, I want you to join the fan club as one thing. That was going to be one of my main points. As far as the rebrand itself and the way they rolled it out, the other thing that I didn't like. Listen, I'm not trying to. I don't really want it to be like shit all over these people. They're doing what they can do to do the job, right? But the way in which they do it. So I'm going to go through some of my questions and tell you the ones they answered and how they answered. So my first question was about timing, and they kind of answered that in the preamble. So I wasn't too upset that they didn't answer that one. The second question I asked were any senior players actively involved in the rebranding process over the 8 months. They said they weren't necessarily actively involved as much as they were going through the phases. They were showing some of the senior players and, coaching staff and rugby operations people, what they were looking at and how they were going to change it. Okay. That's fair enough. I mean, we know year to year who's around, they might not have a senior core there while they're doing this. Okay. I understand that. The next question was, what are the benefits of changing the A from the past font to the current font? They didn't answer that question, because even in the rebranding process, that fonted A doesn't look good. And the A they had would look good if you put it in the color scheme and that's one thing that would, I think, bridge a gap between old and new. For Atlanta fans. The next thing I asked, and this was a question that people were asking kind of in jest about prior, but I thought it was a good question. Do you think the light blue and peach undertones will have MLR fans thinking of the former MLR team that disbanded recently? Because it's those day glowy colors and you don't often see them in rugby. And traditionally they don't go with white and green anyway. Didn't answer. The second to last question was green is a common color of a snake. And it seems most fans want to keep the snake and the Rattlers brand. Why still look for a different mascot? Because they kept talking about, well, if you have mascot ideas, send them to us. And overwhelmingly, out of 177 comments, 75% of them were talking about, well, we want to keep the Rattlers motif going. And then the last question I asked, which kind of took her aback, was, did the MLR have any feedback on the rebrand? And in her letter as well, and also in this answer, and prior to answering this question, she kind of threw MLR and Chicago Hounds under the bus in a way I didn't like. The other thing I didn't like was they kept referencing how it makes the guys feel that the fans don't like this. And to be quite honest, that's just, you're trying to make the fans feel bad for saying what they're saying, their disapproval, by saying the guys on the pitch don't like it. I got to be honest, how many of the New York Giants give a shit what the fans think at any point in their career? That it's going to affect them on the field. And I got to be honest, if that's what's going to affect you on the field, that's a systemic issue. That's an issue from the top of the fucking organization, that shit's dripping down to the fucking players. And we have seen in the MLR, in past organizations, how they function when that shit drips down, right? When if the head's not working, the body's going to die. And we've seen it happen already in 5 years. Exactly. I didn't want to bring that analogy. I thought it was too much of a softball, Rick. And you're taking all my. Yeah, I know exactly. Rick's an avid softball player, as you could tell. I play a little more fast pitch. But my point being, it was the way they handled it was not right. There was, at certain points, I think they forgot they were on camera because the people there were reacting. Their body language was very poor. Here's the other side of it. Here's the other side of it. And Daryl and Rick, you could tell me I'm wrong about this. There were some fans that just wouldn't fucking let it go either. Like, they gave you the answer. So they said they're not going back to the black and red. And 12 people asked it again. And I'm like, she just answered that she's not doing it. 12 people asked, why didn't you involve the fans? And she just said, I just didn't do it. That's on me. That was the first thing out of the gate, she said. So maybe those fans came late or whatever. But again, she had answered that question previously. Yeah. So there were some of these questions that I felt were asked were a little bit unruly and really didn't, if you were going to ask an actual question, ask a question. So there was two sides of this thing.
So let me ask. Go ahead, Rug.
That's part of and this, I think this is a very common issue because we are a niche sport. Rugby is a niche sport in the United States, but because you don't have mainstream media that are, following the sport, you don't have press conferences with reporters that are following closely, that kind of have an etiquette and kind of have, circle the wagons a little bit and kind of have, are coming at it from all the angles, but don't step on each other's toes. And that's why it can be kind of difficult when you have an open forum like this. Is my only thought.
If they had an experienced PR person handling the question asking, they would have noted this has already been answered. Right. I'm not going to ask them again about this. And the guy just kept asking the same questions to them. And I was just like, dude, we're just beating a dead horse here.
And I want to make sure that we stay on the topic here because we're not trying to be able to discuss how they handled the press conference, right? Mm-hmm. We're trying to be able to figure out what led to it and what is the reactions from this here. So one thing I want to circle back around to that Scott brought up is, Amanda White being the person responsible to be able to speak out on behalf of Rugby ATL, said, I take responsibility. I should have included the fans. A lot of people now have said, okay, so what was the remedy to be able to create a supporters club that is basically promoted and controlled by the club? Doesn't give them the ability to be actually truly a supporters club, right? Because that would be going against tradition of what we've had from the other teams, as you mentioned before. So it's almost like a platitude. And then to be able to say, don't worry, you could still go ahead and wear your old Rugby ATL gear. We'll accept it. I needed your permission.
Yeah. That was the other thing. I got to be honest. A lot of the fans also were engaged about ticketing prices. And I thought her answer there was a good answer. And people were still banging the drum about ticketing, but the way she explained it and what she said made sense from a business standpoint. Right. And she even used other clubs that do the same thing and how they want to expand past that.
What was that? Some of our fans.
They only were using the middle of Silverback Stadium. This year, they're leasing out the entire stadium. So with that is going to come more game day cost. And they were talking about Seattle, when they first started.
And that's a 5,000-seat stadium, right?
Correct. When Seattle started, they only sold the middle sections and then worked their way out when the demand came in. So there's feeling that the demand is there. So ticket pricing is going to go up. And then, of course, people are like, it's even more than New York. And I'm like, yeah, but you guys have like 5,000 more seats than, or you have it's like 1,500 more seats than we do. At Mount Vernon, so
parking is really also fact, y'all are splitting cost, right, with a bunch of other groups that go and play at that stadium in New York, correct?
Well, in New York, it's a county stadium, so they can supplement income in other ways.
And Silverback's a little bit
now. Sorry to interrupt. One question somebody asked that they never answered, and I thought this was a good question that they should have answered. Was there any consideration into rebranding Silverback Stadium? To an ATL brand and bring in more commercial entities to negate some of the cost.
Presented by American Airlines.
Yeah. Something like that. But again, one of the questions he either didn't see it, because I got to be honest, there's a lot of questions coming in, a lot of comments flowing. That maybe he just missed it, but I thought that was a good question they could have answered.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to take the opportunity here with the minutes that we have remaining to be able to throw it back at you. I challenge each of you to tell me something that you like about the rebrand and what was handled. And I'll start with Scott, because we want to try and offer a bit of a balance. We don't want to just seem like we're just bashing on an organization and the people who have done some work, although it's clearly being met with resistance. But let's challenge what the course of the conversation here. Scott, tell me one thing you like.
I'll go first because I can see Rick is going to struggle with finding something he likes.
Yeah, that's why I get the guys on the back end more time.
I'll put it this way: I liked the pitch that they threw about being the disruptor and not being the quintessential Georgia ATL team.
Okay.
Like I understand it.
Yeah, that's actually a strength. Stepping away from
that was a strength. That was a strength, and that was a pitch you probably should have swung at.
Theoretically,
but you didn't even fucking foul it off. You just watched it fucking go by, and it was an 0-2 count.
So you like the concept. Delivery was poor.
That shit. It was an 0-2 count, and you just pulled the Carlos Beltran in Game 6 and went, That's the end of my playoffs run. I mean,
just watch that one. Okay.
It's here's the thing, especially when you're talking about the South, there's a thing about tradition that they love. And there's a reason Austin went with, the hook 'em horns colors. And there's a reason that, you have all of those Atlanta teams are red and black, or in the 70s and 80s, red and white.
Right.
And there's a tradition there that I think
leverage the existing,
and same thing with New York. I mean, New York is an orange. Most teams are the orange and blue, or have the blue on them, or the blue and red. So you have those traditions, and but that doesn't mean you can't get away from it. But I mean, to really the thought was there, and I like that thought, but the execution was just.
Okay, great. So when I asked you for something good, you still said it was bad.
No, I said the thought was good. I said the execution was bad. Different.
All right, let's hear it from you, Rob.
Well, we are talking about a team in the South, and as we know, the Southerners and their typical charm have a way of offering a backhanded compliment. So I'm going to stick with that and suggest that, I like the fact that they tried to connect the colors to something Georgia. The canopies are green. The peach color, at the nape of the neck there, right at the base of the neck is a peach, like the peach is grown in the state. And the blue to represent the sky, okay. But again, it comes down to execution and delivery. And the fact is, the way I learned that is not from anything that came out of ATL. The way I learned it is from an actual season ticket holder who went to an event, and it was explained to them.
I think I read the same one, and I wish I could send a shout out to them, but I can't remember who it was.
But why didn't they put that out?
They did apparently at a season ticket event.
Right.
But
but don't put that out to the public. So like Rick, let's just go back to Rick talking about the ironworkers. They said, the ironworkers built the city of New York. And what'd they do? They didn't just give some crappy tagline like Tri-City. They said, change the skyline. And then on the jerseys the past 2 years have been iconic skyline items for the city of New York. So everything ties in together.
Right. There's been a building.
Yeah, the video they put out and prior videos of them going to the training center of the ironworkers stuff. But like, put that out in public.
Okay, so Rob, I want to make sure I understood it. You like the explanation once it was explained to you by a fan.
Yeah, right. I can appreciate the attempt. I didn't care for the attempt, but I can appreciate the attempt.
Okay, so there's a narrative they try to create about the branding and all of that type of stuff. Although, again, it sounds like it's an execution issue. Right. Okay, so let's hand it over to Rick.
I don't totally hate the logo.
Nope. Try again. You misunderstood the instruction.
Positive.
I'm like trying to take a piece of crap in a box and figure out how to sell it.
You can't polish a turd.
I asked, I didn't specifically ask Dustin, but I knew that Dustin would catch on to this. Just asked him to put the old color scheme plus a little bit of gold, which would further connect them to ATL teams, into that logo. And I thought, that's about 90% better than the color scheme that they brought out. The color, if you just take the colors away, give me that logo for a new team, it's not bad. It's okay.
We're getting closer.
It's okay. And I think if I didn't have the original, like if I didn't have this, or even looking directly at this, but color scheme this on that new logo, I'm thinking it looks maybe a little bit more professional. So I could understand why they wanted to make.
I wonder. Here's the thing. I wonder if there's still an Atlanta Flames trademark out there from the old 80s hockey team, which has a red A.
Well, to me, I initially looked at it and I thought that looks like a hockey logo. I associated with that. And I'll tell you why in a moment. But you know what, Rick, your time's done. You've spoken enough.
I tried.
Okay.
Let's hand it over to Daryl.
All right. Thinking positive. I actually don't mind the colors. The logo's not, it's okay. But here's the deal. It's if I hadn't seen Chicago's, I would have been a lot more positive. Okay, I can live with the color. I actually kind of like the jerseys. I think the jerseys they look pretty good.
Well, who doesn't like black and white? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's positive, but probably the most positive thing. Okay, let me back up a second. So Amanda's been there a year, right? Nobody's seen her until tonight. I mean, I say in that format, they've seen her on the sidelines.
I think it's even farther back
But
than that. I think
heard her name bandied here,
2019,
and she's
she
been
said that
kind
she
of
was in the
over here.
organization. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, but she's been kind of a very,
Back
very
office
aloof.
person.
I've seen her at headquarters a couple of times, and she's not a super outgoing. At least when I was there, I didn't see her outgoing. But anyway, on a positive note, the scum has been. No, that's the wrong word. It's been brought to the surface, right? And so, sorry, nothing personal. That's the wrong word.
Who would have thought on this show, like, and this is what I need to do next time to like make it the most awkward rant. Is like, tell me something you like about it, gentlemen. Oh, well, it's not bad. No, try again. The scum of no, try again.
It's a tall order.
But I think he's hitting on something. Sorry, Daryl.
Yeah.
I think you're hitting on something about the execution of like, so you threw together a color scheme that has 4 different colors. Instead of throwing together a color scheme that has 2 different colors and doing what every other team in the MLR does, which is have an alternate jersey. So you have your white and green or whatever you're going to have. You have your green and white, and then your alternate is that peach and light blue. And my point is the game plan has been laid out by other teams. How do you not see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry,
on
Daryl.
that note, though, by the time this show airs, or maybe just before, just after, I happen to know that jersey and everything else will be revealed.
But Dallas still won't.
Dallas and I can't remember which one's first and which one's second.
Well, to be honest, speaking of it, if you look at the video, their kits are in the fucking background on a hanger.
Yeah.
So,
I saw that too.
Just saying.
Okay. So let me dive into and share my one thing that I think I kind of do like, although I referenced it earlier, I'll come back to it, is to me it does, the logo and the font and the way it's structured reminds me of an amateur hockey side, right? But I kind of like the retro feel, but it's just not delivered in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
What I do like is that you can clearly see the A, then the T, and then the L in the bottom right-hand corner. But it's the L that makes me feel like it should be the hockey stick, right? The bend.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I feel like it's got a hockey feel to it.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is I like it, but not for this team.
Right.
Let it be somewhere else. And on that note, we want to be able to ask all of those that are tuning in here, joining this show, join this rant, to be able to tell us what you think. And of course, we want to be able to have you be as blunt as you like. Clearly, this bunch of guys have shared their thoughts quite openly about it. So maybe you can tell us what you like or dislike by following us under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod. We welcome your comments. You can do so on social media under the handle at Rugby Rant Pod, or alternatively continue to be able to enjoy our content on the Rugby Network. But whatever it is, we want to be able to hear what your opinion might be. Gentlemen, I think that we've now debated as much as we can from this, and the true takeaway is that the sentiment is that great, a cool idea delivered badly. And certainly received badly in that way as well by the greater rugby community, and certainly those much closer to Rugby ATL who have been the hardened supporters. And that supporters club remains to be seen what it may look like as suggested by Amanda White. It'll be interesting to be able to see where it goes, but what we have come to learn about American sports is that everybody likes a winning team. So if perhaps you put a championship behind your name and people don't care who you are called, because remember this, we once had a team called the Guiltinis.
What did the famous owner Al Davis say? Just win, baby.
Yep, just win. So let's leave it there. And again, thank you all for tuning in and catching this episode. We'll continue to be able to do this week after week with your help, because we aim to be able to grow rugby one fan at a time. Before we leave here, it's again a big shout out to our 2 guest ranters, that of Daryl McCormick representing Rugby ATL supporters. Thank you again for joining us here. And of course, the forever favorite, I don't know what we call this guy now. He's the man of many talents, the man of many rambles, the man of many whiskeys, Rick Collins. always a pleasure. But of course, a great proponent of delivering the supporters experience at the Dallas games with the Jackal Den. Make sure that you catch both these boys at a stadium nearby. Again, pleasure to be able to have you here. On behalf of the gang, thank you for joining us. And I guess we'll see you guys at the next one.